All right, welcome to this week's episode of the Vets in Real Estate Podcast. I am joined by Marine and Naval Academy grad Drew Morris, who's going to tell us about his journey through the military and what he's doing in real estate now. So, Drew, welcome so much to the show. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, great to be here, man.
Yeah, so little bit of it, you're obviously still a Marine because there's never a former Marine, right? That's how it
Right,
works.
that's how it works.
So, so walk me through. You went to the Naval Academy, commissioned on the green side, and what'd you do while you were in service?
Yeah. So every how I think just like there's no former Marines. Every Marine officer is a platoon leader or rifle platoon leader. So you start out, at TBS, the basic school,
Mm-hmm.
for 6 months, and it's just like a basic officer course. But from there, you pick MOSs, and I went into logistics. So MOS 0402. Went out. My first assignment was at 1st Battalion, 5th Marines in Camp Pendleton, which is an infantry battalion, and that was 2007 that I checked in to the unit and filled a bunch of different roles in the battalion, and I was there for about 3 years, a couple deployments. We did an 11th MEU deployment, so that's like basically a Westpac, Pacific Ocean tour, they call it. That's a pretty, I don't know, active deployment. There was a typhoon in Bangladesh that there was humanitarian assistance needed. There was a lot of stuff in 2007 going on in Basra in Iraq, and so the battalion ended up becoming like a theater reserve force for things there. We went to Djibouti in Africa for some training, and then there was also some counter piracy ops that happened there. And then, of course, like I think as I learned, there were activities like intergovernment, intermilitary events and things that I actually was never a part of. I guess they didn't let young young lieutenants be a part of that kind of stuff, but it did happen. And then we went down to Australia back, and then of course second deployment was when we had the big push into Iraq in 2009. So we were one of the infantry battalions that was a part of the MEB introduction in the Helmand River Valley. So that was operational time, and then after that we wanted my wife and I were like, okay, let's figure out a B billet, one that ultimately we could just stay put for about 3 years. So we volunteered for recruiting duty, which you didn't really hear that on the officer side. In fact, I don't think you hear that from anybody. Most people will get assigned to recruiting duty, but we did volunteer for it, and that's how we actually ended up in the Denver area, and became put name in the hat, got selected. Found out actually I was selected when we were in Afghanistan, and then in 2010 made the move out here to the Denver area and became the operations officer and then the executive officer for the recruiting station out here. So that was it was kind of a crazy experience because it's totally different than what we had been doing, of course,
Sure.
in the fleet. There were different priorities, there were just a different mission, and it was a different type of pressure. But what was interesting about that experience was, one, it exposed me to the sales process. Again, I had no experience in sales. I mean, didn't even think about it. And most Marines don't. And definitely most Marines that are going to recruiting duty have no idea what the sales process is, and that's why they go through the training they go through. But as the OPSO, you're essentially the sales manager, the sales leader, and so I had 13 staff NCOICs who each had their sales teams across 4 states, and so basically every day I was on the phone with each of them, kind of going through the previous day's activity and results and what their teams are doing, any challenges, issues that are coming up, and then also helping screen new applicants who were interested in becoming Marines. So it was very time intensive and a very systematic endeavor, and so that learning that actually is what kind of led to the exploration of real estate. Believe it or not, is being in recruiting. So did those. So basically, 1-5 for operational time, recruiting station Denver for my B billet. We liked being in Denver, in the Denver area, so much that we wanted to just stay, and so at the end of my 3-year uh, tour, I basically put in my letter to resign my commission and get out, and we stayed here. So
Hmm.
here we are. And I got out in 2013, June is when I went on. So yeah, basically exactly 12 years ago,
All right.
went on terminal leave.
So was when you were getting out, was it I'm going to go into real estate? Was it exactly what you thought, or was that kind of just dumb luck that you ended up finding yourself there, or what was that process? I guess if you knew you wanted to stay in
Yeah,
Denver, what was finding the career? I guess after the military.
yeah. There was definitely some exploration to that. I started talking to people, just talking to people about like what's out there, like what do you think, what kind of industry opportunities are out there, and people started to make those connections, say, hey, you should talk to this person or you should talk to this
Hmm.
person, um, and and at that point, let's say even like 2012, late 2012, early 2013, the Denver metro area wasn't what it is today, um, even though that was only 12 years ago. So much has changed, and so at that point, Denver hadn't yet become like this second tech hub or like this
Right.
entrepreneurial like startup scene, or some of the major industries that we have, even like aerospace, which Colorado is like the second largest aerospace, or at least it has been, like location next to California. So uh, there weren't the opportunities that at least I wasn't aware of. Just getting out and just being in the Marine Corps and kind of immersed in Marine things. And so as we were exploring things, I wanted to explore sales roles because I enjoyed it. Um, and I was also looking at kind of operations, logistics stuff, but everything that we looked at required us moving away,
Hmm.
um, which was that was like not part of the plan. Like the plan is to stay here. So how do we do that? And then also, other roles required like tons of travel, which I was already doing with recruiting, and we wanted something different. We wanted to be involved in the community. We wanted a way to be more involved in our church. We wanted to just like be able to stay put and kind of start like quote unquote like a normal life, um, in a family and all that. And all these things we were exploring weren't meeting that criteria. So we continued to look, and then actually by, I guess we'll call it, um, uh, dumb luck, or God's provision. The My wife was having breakfast with our real estate agent's wife, and she brought up like the idea of like, hey, Drew should talk to John, who's the realtor, and who we used to buy our house when we moved here, 2010. Just to hear about real estate, and we had never even considered it. It
Hmm.
wasn't even on the radar. I never. Although John is not like a blue-haired lady that works for a old company. That's all I always had imagined is like real estate. You kind of fit this look and create this
Hmm.
this way of being, and like so it just never was a thing I considered. But after talking to John a few times, and kind of learning more about the industry and learning what it meant to be in real estate on a day-to-day basis, it sort of actually seemed more attractive, and it was like, oh, this actually fits like how we want to live, how we want to be involved. um, there's obviously a lot of opportunity for income growth and to make the business what you want it to be, and so that really resonated with me. um, and there was an element of too, like, hey, we're stepping out on like this big journey of into the unknown, and we're stepping out on faith, that like things are going to work out. So anyways, like there were a lot of things that really like appealed to us as a family, and we're like, okay, like let's figure it out. And then the other thing too that really made it make sense was I wasn't just starting out like by myself. So part of the discussion and all that was like, hey, I'm gonna have people around me that can help mentor me. I'm gonna have people that can help guide me, and maybe I can help them on some of their transactions, so I can learn learn the real estate process and I can really learn how this all works. And that, I think that was a critical part of it too, because I feel like going out there and being totally by yourself um, leads. I mean, it's a really isolating industry as it is,
Mhm.
but like starting by yourself can be. I mean, I can't even imagine doing that. So um, that model that he introduced with me was helped me become successful early on, or at least learn very quickly and start doing transactions and helping people and all that. So um, that so because of that conversation, ultimately it led us to, yep, let's pull the trigger. Um, yeah, we made that decision. So I went on terminal leave in June of 2013, and I was licensed that same month.
Mm.
And I basically had uh, a 2.5 month runway where I was like, okay, I'm getting paid still. I still got Marine Corps salary, but on September 1st of 2013, like that all ends, and like here we go. So basically, from June to September, I was just like, out there doing things like being in the office, helping out with transactions, helping doing open house, all the things I can do um, to just kind of get a head start. And that's what led us to the licensing.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have some people as they're getting out, they're like, I want to go to real estate, it's been a family business, or I think I could do this, or those kind of things. And then there's other folks that kind of your story is not terribly dissimilar to mine, where it was like, okay, sure, let's give this thing a try. Let's sound like
Yeah.
it could be a cool career field. What was as you're going through licensing and all that? Did you automatically go with your realtor's brokerage right away, or did you kind of shop around, or what was that process like as you're kind of trying to figure out where to go?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I didn't even shop around because I didn't know what to shop for. Like it's hard to know what you don't know when it comes to brokerage exploration. So really, for me, it was of course relationships. That relationship we have with him and his family, and then what that meant for my wife and I, and so that was the most important thing. And as we were looking, ultimately, it was like, hey, I don't, financially, it's like, okay, yep, that makes sense. Like split makes sense.
Mm,
Um, yeah, no concerns. Like it wasn't anything overtly like egregious
yeah.
with splits and all that. So but everything else looked great. I mean, I had a great office location, a place that I could work out of. So a lot of things that helped make it a no-brainer.
Yeah. So I mean, now 12 or so years off. I mean, looking back at it, was there anything you would have done differently on searching for that first brokerage? I mean, I don't want to throw anybody
Yeah,
in the bus, right? But I mean,
no.
were there things that if you were to look at this again, you probably would have handled maybe a little bit differently?
Um, my first like gut reaction is no. I think it was exactly what um, I needed to be able to get started. And a good example would be you take your real estate licensing course and you step out and you realize like, well, at least I realized like, hey, I don't really know anything about real estate.
Mm.
And most importantly, I don't even know how to write a contract. Um, if I have a client who wants to buy a home, which this happened, had a client going around showing him homes, and it's like, oh yeah, this is the one. Like, let's submit an offer, and I'm like, okay, let's submit an offer. And so I call um, one of the like managing brokers of the team that I was on. I was like, hey, can you help me write an offer? Um, and so this guy Chris, he like basically sat down with me for like a few hours and just like walked me through like here's all the elements of the contract, and then from that point like okay, I was good, I understood it. But just having like that was critical to have that personal one-on-one that was immediately
Yeah.
available. So yeah, looking back, like I don't know, I would say if for people searching, I would say look for that. Like look for that same kind of relationship where someone's going to take care of you in the beginning because it's very hard to get started, and you need someone that's really just going to put you into the mix right away. So you're not sitting around in the office wondering what to do on a given day. You're actually out there working immediately because that's the best way to learn and, of course, gain experience and then gain some credibility.
Yeah. So as you're starting to do those first handful of deals, Did you ever have one of those moments where you're kind of doing this, like, what in the world did I get myself into? Like, dear Lord, like, is this what's supposed to be for me?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I would say the first one of the first showings I ever did with a client, um, it was one of those. It was like an internet lead or like a sign call.
Mhm.
It wasn't somebody I knew personally. You know, I met them or I talked to them. They wanted to see this particular condo in Denver, schedule it, and then went and met them there and yeah, showed a little bit, talked to them a little bit, and then later that night, um, basically he calls and he's like, hey, thanks for the time. Like, you're not the right agent for me. I'm gonna move on to something else. Like, and to me, like I was crushed. Like, oh my goodness, how could somebody like not
And you
think that
got
I'm
like
like
me.
the right
Awesome.
agent? Yeah, yeah, yeah. How do they think that I won't be taking care of, all these things? And it really like, I mean, it really was hard, to hear
Mm.
that. Um, and because you're for me coming in, like I'm so invested and it's like personal for me, right? And I'm trying to, every client is hopefully becomes like a friend, and so like for someone to reject me, that was a lot. Um,
Sure.
and so that really like bothered me for a while, and it's like, oh man, like, do I really want to do this? Can I handle this? And if this is like how it's going to be, and that was so early on. It was like one of the first people that I'd ever like met, to do this. So, um, and I would say that what I've learned over the 12 years is that those type of interactions still happen,
Mm.
like because people are people, and you know some people just don't work with some people, and that's fine. And everybody has to find their own person that's going to take care of them the best, or at least the way that they feel they're being taken care of the best. And so I just learned like I would say probably once a year there's like an interaction where it's like, oh man, that really just kind of ruined my month, right? Like it just really
Mm.
bothered me. But you just realize like that's just how it is. And that's just part of being in sales and part of like being engaged with people.
Yeah, I could imagine, especially you mentioned it's personal for you, right? This is who you are. It's what you're building. It's your obvious income for you and your family and
Yeah.
all that as well. Yeah, I can imagine just that rejection. I mean, I've been through it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
That rejection, especially early on, has gotta weigh on you. Did you find ways that kind of helps you cope with that? And now that if it happened today, all right, it sucked, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. How do I'm not very good at coping in general, but I would say being around people that are great supporters and encouraging can really help offset that. Like intentionally go and say, hey, like go hang out with them, right? And
Mm.
maybe bring it up, or of course, like talking to my wife, and because she can read me if I'm, something's off, she'll know, and of course, like I can bring it up and I'll work through that. And then, there's an element of just kind of being upset with it and like being okay with being upset for a little bit, and then just saying, okay, now once you do that, it kind of move on. And sometimes like vocalizing it actually is helpful to just say like, okay, yep, it's not, it's a big deal, but it's not that big a deal. So like, let's move on.
And I think I know with me, one of the things I've seen and I've kind of noticed too is I almost treat it like a breakup. When a deal falls apart, when a client relationship, you almost treat it like a breakup. It's all right to have emotions for a little bit. It's okay to kind of feel away for a little bit, and
Yep.
then once you kind of step away, it's okay. I had one where we've been working on it forever. It's 6 months deal, going to make our entire year, if not 2 years, and the whole deal fell apart. Of course,
Mm,
I am all sorts of emotion, but I'm obviously calm enough to call my wife and I'm like, I'm gonna be in a terrible mood. I'm gonna have to
yeah.
go through this. Just give me a minute. I'm gonna take off from work. I'm probably gonna go, sit at a bar, have a drink, just I'm gonna stew over it for a minute, and then I'll be okay. Just give me this little space tonight. And you know, my wife didn't like that answer. What wife would? What do you mean you don't want to talk to me? Um, but kind of just making sure you go through the emotions with that. Where I think I've seen a lot of agents as well struggle with that, where they don't take the rejection, they take the rejection extremely personally, and then it just starts to compound over and over and over and over again. And
Yeah.
then those are the ones that don't make it or they don't last, or especially with veterans. I mean, that could be
Yeah.
compounding other issues from service, mental health, those kind of things as well, which could ultimately be a
Yeah.
struggle. And finding ways to cope is absolutely important.
Yep. Yeah, that's huge, man. Absolutely. Like you have to acknowledge it and just
Yeah.
like, yeah, confront it head on. Otherwise it'll just stew and it doesn't make things better.
Yeah. So in you've been at this for several years now, and you've got an interesting business because you don't just serve Denver, you serve Pensacola as well.
That's right.
How in
Yeah.
the
So
world? I mean, that's almost a continent apart from each other. How do you manage both markets,
yeah.
and what led to that discussion to add Pensacola after?
Yeah. Um, well, so I grew up in Pensacola.
Okay.
So my dad was in the Navy, so I actually went, elementary, middle, high school, graduated from there before heading off to school and the Marine Corps and all that. So I always have been connected to that area because of friends and family and all that. But I would say where it really started. So in 2018, we bought our first long-term rental in Florida, which is in Central Florida. But then 2021, um, our son was going to a school there down in kind of north of Pensacola, 45 minutes north or so, a specialized school because of some trauma and things in their young life or in his young life that kind of started kind of creeping up and um, different story. But what that led us to when going down to Pensacola more often, and while we were down there, we're like, well, let's look at real estate because does it make sense to buy a property that we can use to stay in, like when we're here, and then rent it out when we're not there um, to pay to help pay the mortgage. So 2021, we went down there and we started looking at real estate, found a property that made sense, and that started, and we ended up closing on it and doing some renovation work, doing some, of course, like furnishings, and diving into like essentially our first short-term rental,
Mhm.
Airbnb, VRBO, and that was actually a pretty unique experience because that brought together a lot, kind of all of our skill sets between like my wife and I, where um, I was doing, she brought like design and decor to furnish it and to choose like how we're going to remodel some things, um, and then I brought kind of like the systems and marketing element to help stand it up to become a short-term rental. Between
Mhm.
like listing photography and video and all the things that go into that. Um, and so it was a kind of a neat combination or a neat combining of our effort or skill sets to do this. So we started doing that, the short-term rental side, and it started doing really well. And then the next year we were like, oh, let's, maybe we should like continue this and like try to build on this. So we ended up finding another property in Pensacola that we could use that also had an ability to have a separate short-term rental element as well. Um, and so we did that, and that was actually the first. Leading up to that point, I actually got licensed. So that purchase became my first deal as a licensed agent in Florida. So it was a personal deal. Um, and so with that, we did the same thing, like renovation work. We prepped a certain part of the home to be able to rent out on Airbnb specifically. And again, all the same skill sets that we had learned, did it again, and and decided, okay, yep, now we have two short-term rentals operating, and that's and it's we're enjoying it and all that, and then essentially what then also happened as a part of that is like other people started asking us to help them with certain projects. So like some clients from and friends from Colorado, for example, wanted uh, a short term, like a beach house, basically, a vacation place for them. So in that sense, like did some searching, um, found the property, and we combined trips and things like that, and took them around, um, and then closed on one, and then from there we also did like remodel work, furnishing, the marketing, like stand up operations stuff for the short term renting. And so that was a good example of like how we're kind of doing it a little bit differently in Florida. So I would say like our Florida business has evolved into being a primarily vacation rental management and and associated support element of that. Like, so if somebody wants to buy a place, or if somebody wants to furnish a place, like we can talk to them about that kind of stuff. Um, so Colorado is going to be primarily like brokerage. Florida has transitioned into primarily like vacation rental management, um, and then of course like our own personal, which that incorporates some of our own personal real estate investing as well.
I would say with your military background, and of course Pensacola being a huge military city, Denver not necessarily known for military city, but a lot of veterans, a lot of military, especially with Colorado Springs not too far, and folks like with Fort Carson, kind of in those areas. Have you found? I don't even think it's called Fort Carson anymore. I don't know if they changed the name of that one too. But
So
with as much kind of military presence, have you found that that has been kind of a niche that you've worked at, is kind of working with military, or is it kind of you run from it? And I think we've seen agents do both, completely
yeah,
double down on, look at me, I'm your veteran realtor, where some are like kind of a secret military. You never know unless they talked about it.
yeah. I've so my real estate business has always been built on who I know, and who the people I know, who they know. So referral based is the term. And because of the network of the Naval Academy network, in just kind of military academies in general, and then the Marine Corps network, um, a lot of business has naturally come through that because people want to work with people that they know, like, and trust. And so that's a big part of it. So I feel like what's really been neat, and this goes both ways in terms of like trust. So I know, like, when I'm working with a veteran, like I have a higher level of trust immediately with that person because I feel like I should. Like I feel like there's a common bond in some capacity, regardless of branch and experience. So uh, I do value, and I because I value those relationships, I feel like I would say probably 50% of my business has been um, veterans, and also timing wise in the Denver metro area. Um, again, when I was licensed from 2013, that was when the big population shift was happening and big boom um, out in Denver metro, and so a lot of those people were people like in my peer group who are they just finished their Marine Corps or their service.
Hmm.
They were moving out to a new place like Denver, which sounded really cool with the West and the mountains and job opportunities. And and so I was connected through a lot of people because not only real estate, but also because I had done that same thing. I had moved to Denver and started a new career and have a new life. And so I knew a lot of things about doing that. And so people reached out for multiple reasons. And then many times that led to also um, helping them in their real estate goals.
Yeah. And I've always found it interesting how some will. It sounds like you kind of blended a little bit between the two. To me, it's always interesting people that absolutely go out and just blast that. Look at me, where others are kind of quiet about it. So I don't know. I've always found that to be interesting how
Yeah.
we all get to have the same experiences, the same kind of background, and how we utilize it and how we may utilize it, a little bit differently. To me, it's fascinating. Was that a
Yeah.
deliberate choice one way or the other, or did you just kind of fall into this kind of 50-50 kind of mix?
I would say there was a deliberate choice to make it to to make sure people knew or know that I'm a veteran,
Hmm.
and but I don't but I never went down the route of like, hey, let's make it, like I have a flag in my logo, right? Or like all the things that kind of stand out as like either veteran or military specific.
Cool.
Um, and that was just a personal choice because I think I also wanted it. I didn't want to feel like I was only working with vets either. Um, And so the yeah, I'm thinking of a so like I think LinkedIn would be the platform where um, I probably am more overtly veteran
Okay.
in Marine. So like even in the title where you put your under your photo, there's like, oh, mine's like Denver Realtor, like Marine veteran, Naval Academy grad. Like I put that in my title, um, for obviously uh, for a very specific reason, because I want people to know like just immediately like these two things or three things about me, and now that's a way to market, and I think I mainly market um, or interact with veterans on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn has been a huge way to connect with veterans across the country, and of course veterans locally. And in that way, so like in that sense, like I'm very overtly veteran on that platform, but on Facebook, not necessarily, right? Or Instagram even.
Have you found with as much you're doing on LinkedIn, does that transition to business for you? And me on the commercial side, absolutely. I live on LinkedIn all day long. But for on the residential side, have you found that's been a good lead generation source for you?
Absolutely. Um, LinkedIn happened by accident to me. Like in 2013 and 2014, or I would say even before that, 2012, I had no idea what LinkedIn was.
Hmm.
And it was, it's pretty new, and it was truly like a job search kind of website. Um, but somebody, a veteran, had told me about it, and I was like, oh, what is that? Like, I'll look into it. So I signed up, and then I realized like after, um, I said, you know what, as part of like this 1 year, I was like part of the strategy, like I want to start doing more things like on social media, like just figure out all the places I can start being engaging and posting things. And LinkedIn was kind of one of those places where it was by accident. So I remember this specifically. I had like this certain like data set. It was like a map. It's called a price change map, and from our previous brokerage, and I just posted it out there. Like, oh, here's the latest da da da. I put some quick stats, had this visual that's really kind of engaging, and all of a sudden, I started getting like all these messages from people in like comments, and people were like, "Oh, hey, I'm thinking about moving to Colorado. Like, hey, can you send one for my area?" Da, da, like all these
Hmm.
things, and I was like, "Oh man!" So people are actually like paying attention, and they're okay with me posting something not like business related or like job search related. And so as soon as that happened, I was like, okay, like we're pivoting to this. This needs to be like a priority. Um, and so like I just started like tracking every day. Like, okay, I'm going to start or every week, like I'm posting this and like I'm going to post this, I'm going to post this. And I started doing that and
Hmm.
doing that and also just like connecting with people, as many people as I could, on the platform. And then as a result, I mean, I would say I had, probably at the peak of LinkedIn, success and probably like peak of population movement here. I probably had 6 or 7 transactions that came out of it in one, like in a year, like per year. Um, and when you consider $0 spent to do that in that platform, I would say like it's an infinite return. It's probably been the best ROI, um, of any like lead generation source.
Yeah.
So, and then what I also found is like those connections, um, were on average like the price point was higher. Um, the people I enjoyed like the most working with, because of oftentimes we had overlapping backgrounds and again mutual trust, and loyalty, which I appreciated. So like there were some really neat things that came out of that as an accident, but seeing the accident happen and then just kind of digging into it was what helped.
Yeah, I would say my story with LinkedIn was kind of the same. Was it was almost a gateway social media for me. I was like, wait, the algorithm wants you to only post once a day. I can come up with good content once a day. I can spend 15 minutes or so on it each day and comment and like and do all that kind of
Yep.
stuff. And I mean, for me, I was like, okay, I can spend half an hour on this a day and start getting
Yeah.
leads. And that's what we started noticing very quickly is once I got it kind of dialed in, we started getting a ton of leads coming in, and I thought maybe it's just for me on the commercial side, but I think even on the residential side, I've brought it up several times. Like, if you want to look at a certain price point or you want a certain level of clients, you can search that. I mean, San Antonio is big for cybersecurity, so I was like, if you wanted to be the cybersecurity real estate agent, dive in and get in all the cybersecurity communities and post and
Yep.
talk about, and here's the
Yep.
things, and start crafting messages that's going to work for these tech people
Yeah.
that are in the world, and especially if that's your background. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. I think too many agents sleep on LinkedIn. I'm a
They do.
big fan. I'm glad to hear that you found success, because you're the case study, I think, of the residential side that we've been looking for, that
Yeah.
it can happen, and
Oh,
it's
yeah,
not a huge
100%.
time suck compared to other things.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know, I'll tell you, my wife makes fun of me now for this, but there won't be, it's very rare that we go to an event or some kind of networking, whatever, where somebody doesn't come up to me and say, "Hey, are you Drew Morris? Um, I follow you on LinkedIn."
Yep.
Like literally all the time. Um, and those people I meet are the people that they're not the ones liking my posts or commenting. They
Hmm.
just are on there kind of, reading things, seeing things. And so people see that and they see, and they value that engagement or that value that you're trying to put out there and, the stuff that you're doing. So yeah, I would say, if you're not using that, then you're totally missing an opportunity to meet tons of people and network and get, build credibility. Um, you could be posting stuff and nobody's liking it, and that doesn't mean people aren't seeing it, Like people are seeing it.
Yeah, I think that's where the proof comes in, is when somebody comes to you. Even last night, I was doing something for our local university. Sure enough, one of the students like, "Hey, I know you don't know me, but we're connected on LinkedIn. I follow your stuff."
Yeah.
Exact same story. It works, and especially when you go out, that's where the proof is. Yeah, you got 8 likes. Okay, great. You got 2 comments. All right, not that great. But when somebody knows who you are, or when they start talking to you about, "Hey, you posted that article last week about X, Y, and Z, or you made this. Can you explain that a little bit more?" That's a
Yep.
that's rapport. That's already built in trust. They already feel like they know you.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm
That's
a nerd. I
huge.
love LinkedIn, but that's a
Yeah.
huge perk.
That's great.
So now you are now looking at maybe at a complete career transition, but looking at doing something a little bit different. We want to talk about what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, definitely not a career transition. It's more of like an additional duty related to service that I'm trying to add to my plate on a daily basis. So, um, one thing that leading up to this decision, one thing that of course like we learn in real estate is like I mean, our job is to serve others ultimately. I think that's where veterans kind of have a leg up, is like we understand that already. We understand what it means to serve our community. We understand what it means to serve like the people that we work for. So like as an officer, like my Marines don't work for me, like I work for them. And so like there's always been this um, there's always that mentality going into it. And so and then in real estate, you hone that and you continue to live that out on a daily basis, like serving your clients. Um, so what I'm doing this year is I'm basically increasing my level of service to my community through running for city council in Thornton, Colorado. So that's it's a big change and a big jump. It's just adding more things to my plate on a daily basis. So like my days are usually now like, okay, I've got real estate things I do, I've got like vacation rental management things I do, and now I have like campaign stuff that I do. Um, but yeah, so that's what we're working on right now for the next few months.
Have you noticed any skill sets that either from the Marines or from real estate that has kind of worked well in that campaign finance? I mean, I'm really sorry, the campaign side of things.
Yeah, yeah, definitely not in the campaign finance side because that's a whole other beast. But so what's actually really fascinating about, I guess, what I'm learning about campaigning, because again, I've never been a politician. I hope to never be a politician. I hope to always be a public servant, first and foremost. But this campaign process, there are so many things that I'm realizing that really overlap with just what I do on a daily basis in real estate. Um, which the things I do in real estate, a lot of that comes from just under some things from the Marine Corps and like learning about systematic activity and consistency and like just hard work and all these things. But so campaigning, I mean, if you really think about it, so campaign is very similar to real estate in the sense that with real estate, you're out there meeting people, you're taking care of your network, you're engaging people, and ultimately you're trying to earn people's trust, and so that they think that you're a person that's competent, and somebody that they can help them like accomplish their goal. And so with campaigning, it's the same thing. I'm out there meeting people. I'm helping people learn who I am. I'm helping people get to know who I am, and see if I'm somebody that's worthy of their trust to represent them on city council. And so there's a number of activities that are done, but it's work, right? It's like another job, and nobody's like telling me to do these things. It's like I just know that there are certain things that have to happen to do that. Now, and what I mean like nobody's telling me. Like, of course, I have advisors and all that,
Sure.
but like nobody's holding my hand to make sure I'm like going out today and knocking on doors for 2 hours, or like guiding me in what I say, or whether or not I decide to go out or not. So, anyways, there's a lot of there it's very much a self-starter element, and so that, of course, in real estate is a super important element of being successful and continue to be successful. But but yeah, so campaigning has been, yes, it's been really kind of fascinating to see how similar these two industries, or we'll call it, overlap.
Yeah, I think it's always important, not to get way political, but I always think it's important to have other veterans' voices on there. But even from a real estate perspective, I think one of the things I love about real estate is the impact that we and just our profession have on our local community. Where
Absolutely.
on my side of the commercial side, if I do my job right, I put a business in that has a generational wealth component, that it could be a generational family. If they do well, the neighbor could do well. The neighbor from there could do well. This part of town could do well. On the residential side, it's the same thing. You guys are sitting down and putting people in homes that they're going to have their first kids. They're going to, get married, and loved ones are going to die. Like, this is a personal place that we as
Yeah.
real estate agents get to really impact and have an impact on our community, and the fact, and I think bringing that into public office, both the service that comes with the military, but the impact and how much housing and really real estate, the built environment really has on it. It's a much needed, um, very, very much needed. And bless you for doing it. I've thought about it in the past before. Sounds pretty scary. The fact that you took the dive, I mean, bless you for doing it. I wish you the best of luck on it. But I definitely think we need more voices like yours that are out there, talking about
Yeah.
these things and looking out for people.
Yeah. No, I really like that you said, yeah, about the real estate experience, bringing in that to council is actually a really, that's a one thing that I've learned over time in real estate is like, we're, as real estate brokers, we are kind of like this front line of like intelligence of like, what are the people trends? Like, what do people care about? What's people bringing people to a community? What's keeping people from moving to a community? And so when you're on this kind of front line of people trends, like it gives you a different perspective, like of your community, of just like the future of your community. And so it's really neat to see like how much, like you said, like how much the built environment affects people's lives. The built environment is our community. Like that's the foundation of like what we can do or what we can't do. And and I'm really excited about bringing that that kind of perspective to council, and ultimately in service to the residents of Thornton, to help it be, remain and become even more of a place that people want to stay in or move to. So that's yeah, I love that. I love the perspective. I'm glad you had the same.
Yeah. So as we're kind of wrapping everything up on this one, we usually ask the same question at the end of each of these, is if you were to sit back and look back at the Drew 12, 15 years ago, getting ready to leave the service, getting ready to come through, is there any advice now that you would give yourself differently? And we all understand we want to learn those lessons the hard way, but some of those lessons we wish we didn't learn as hard. So is there anything that you would have done differently, or maybe advised yourself to do maybe quicker or differently
Hmm.
as you started to build your post-military career?
Yeah, wow. I mean, I have a million things that came to mind, which would be we could talk for days on all the various topics there. Um, I I think man, what could you do? What would I tell myself? I think it's very easy going, man, there's so many things that are floating through my mind right now. Um, I'll say on a personal side, I think there's a really important element to right away as a new agent, like being very clear um, on like your budget, like what do you want to spend money on, and really tracking heavily your ROI for every spend that you do. Um, and so what I mean by that is like you're going to be as a new agent, as a experienced agent, you get pretty bombarded with things like, oh, spend money on this and we'll help you do this. And people think like, oh, I need to spend money on these ads and I need to spend money on this and do this. And when um, you really don't need to do it at the end of the day. So like having somebody help you define like what that budget is and like what you're actually going to spend money on and like hold to it. Um, and that just helps with your profitability and again like long-term sustainability. I think that's super important to consider because again, people aren't really teaching you that when you get into the business. They don't really teach you any of that. It's more like, hey, you get commission and now you have a paycheck, right? Like there's a big gap between like the commission and what's your paycheck should be. So I think digging into that would have been and earlier on and like holding to it better would have been even more impactful, I think. um, and then, so I guess that's one thing on the personal front. And then, man, maybe on the activity side, defining a niche right away is a really important thing, and really like marketing that niche, even if you don't just work that area, but continue to like push that faster and further and consistently will pay dividends. For you. So I wish I would have started that like even earlier and really dug into it and stuck into that for a longer period of time, But I think I thought I was going to be in a certain kind of like category of real estate when I got in, but then but naturally the veteran element came out even more
Mhm.
so. So like, like looking back, I probably should have started in the veteran side a little more, and dug into that deeper and really figure out a better plan how to really become the guy that serves veterans the best and the most. But again, that evolved with time. But I think defining that as like who you are and kind of reflecting on like who do I want to work with, like what's my background, who do I identify best with, um, doing that exercise earlier on right away and digging into it would have been probably even more valuable.
Yeah, no, I can see it. Both great pieces of advice. I always joke that if you can't make money in real estate, you go sell things to real estate agents.
That's right.
That's the next career field because you're absolutely right. There's so much on it, and I love the fact of diving into a niche. I think it's absolutely important. Find what you want to specialize. Be good at one thing. Doesn't mean you can't do others, but yeah,
Yep.
absolutely great advice. Drew, thank you so much. Best of luck on the campaigning. I'm sure
Thank you.
that is a full-time job in and of itself, trying to get that going on. But I'm certain you'll do great things for your community. And thank you for sharing your time with our community as we try to help these veterans transition into careers in real estate and find success post-military.
Thank you, Will. Yeah, appreciate it, man. Great chatting with you, and thanks for the time. And it's an honor be able to help out.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.